Great. Well, I think we're getting critical mass on the line, so I might just dive in. But since we're sharing locations, Whitney Daly, currently on the island of Martha's Vineyard, but excited to be with you all virtually. So I will be your fearless host for the beginning of this session before I turn it over to our esteemed panelists today. So just quickly, we're going to share a little bit about Global Impact Relations Network, go through our housekeeping, and then I will kick it over. So hello, everyone. Whitney Daly. I am a Senior Vice President of Marketing, Research, and Insights at Porter Novelli, but also a Global Impact Relations Network board member. As a Cone alum myself, I am very thrilled to be here to introduce today's session, but we'll quickly go through a couple housekeeping items. And for anybody that is new on the line today, share a little bit about Global Impact Relations Network. So we work to legitimize and educate professional communicators on the discipline of authentic and transparent communications and how that really transcends to positive impact. Today, our network is about 500 communicators strong from around the world. And these are individuals who really stand with this idea that we need to promote the importance of responsible, purpose-led communications, principles, and practices. So collectively, we are using the tools of communications to drive positive change, lead with truth, and shine a light on the solutions to some of the world's most pressing issues. So we welcome anyone who joins us today to join us on this journey. You can take our pledge. We're going to drop that into the chat now. And we welcome that participation from you. I'll share a little bit more about how you can get involved at the end of today's session as well. So our Impact Council sessions, like the one that you are joining today, they are 1-hour sessions really facilitated around conversations featuring inspiring communicators or brands that are discussing important trends, best practices, and really anything that is critical for authentic and impactful communications. So with that, let's get right into housekeeping. I don't want to keep you any longer. I know the conversation is going to be fantastic today. So we are recording today's session. We will share this information with our network externally. Just a reminder to be mindful of sharing sensitive information. Again, we want you to be open and engaged in this conversation, but do not disclose any client names or individual names if that information is confidential. Please add any questions, thoughts, comments you have into the chat. We're going to leave 10 minutes at the end of the conversation today to address any questions from the audience, so please feel free to populate those throughout today's session. We love hosting these on Zoom because we get to see everyone and people can kind of come off mic and ask their questions, but please keep yourself muted during the conversation so we can really focus on the content, and we hope to have a very active chat during the conversation. If you would like to continue the conversation with anyone that you have met or heard from on the session today, please just ask the Impact Relations team. We'll facilitate introductions if both parties agree. Okay, housekeeping out of the way, let's dive into today's topic. In recognition of International Women's Day and Women's History Month, who better to feature on our March Impact Council than the woman who has made history by pioneering social purpose movements, the mother of social impact herself, Carol Cone. Thank you for joining us, Carol.
Pleasure.
So today we will dive into Carol's journey. We're going to explore her experience as a female pioneer and business leader. We're going to talk about tips, advice for impact consultancies or social purpose practitioners, and really unpack her opinions on important global issues. So I will now introduce Melissa Orozco. She is the Executive Director of the Global Impact Relations Network and also CEO of Yulu PR. I will keep my introduction of Carol very short because I know Melissa has a lot to share today. But again, we're just thrilled to have Carol Cone with us today to share her insights. Carol is the founder and CEO of Carol Cone on Purpose and is widely recognized as one of the foremost social impact experts in the space. She is a trusted pioneer and advisor to the Global Impact Relations Network, and we're just excited to have her with us today and an opportunity to learn from her insights and her experience and hear about her journey to purpose. So with that, I will turn it over to Melissa. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, as Whitney just shared, thank you, Whitney. We have been excited to feature Carol in the hot seat, and it came by demand and request from some of the members over the past few months since we started these impact councils. So thank you, Carol. As Whitney also mentioned, it was difficult for us to sum up Carol's career, 40 years of purpose, into an hour. So I've made some top line notes. We'll not even touch the depth of it, but hopefully I don't miss anything too significant. So Carol started her purpose journey in 1980, before I was born, just before I was born.
Thank you. Yikes.
Just before she became my mother, as we like to say to each other. So she started Cone Communications in 1980. She ran that successfully for 30 years, did countless award-winning campaigns, worked on every issue that's covered through the SDGs, has raised billions of dollars through or millions, I don't know about billions, but regardless, has put a dent in the impact that we're trying to create. About 30 years after, she decided to make a shift over to working with Edelman. She sold her company to Omnicom. We're going to ask some questions about that, what that's like to sell your child, your baby, after selling a business when it's in its success. She went over to Edelman, joining she was chair as Edelman's business and social purpose division for 5 years, played a big role in the purpose, resources, and division that it is today. And then in 2015, she created a very unique, progressive, and I think agency model that we're going to see a lot more of with Carol Cone on Purpose, which involves the Purpose Collaborative, which is a hand-selected, curated group of agencies that specialize in the social purpose space. I'm privileged and honored to say that ULU is one of those agencies. So I've had the opportunity to work with Carol and learn from her. And she also, a couple of years ago, started a podcast, Purpose 360. We'll drop that link into the chat, which has been a really fun, again, dashboard learning, as I like to call it. She's spoken with Fortune 50 CEOs about their purpose journey. Carol doesn't only consult brands, she consults business leaders, which is really great and important. So we're going to dive into some of that too. And I would be remiss to not mention that Carol is an advisor to the Global Impact Relations Network. She helped us write out our Charter for Responsible Communications and our mandate. She's very honest, has always given the most raw, honest feedback on how we can refine this, and it's appreciated, and I think we're all better for it. So without further ado, Carol, thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. And yes, Melissa is one of I have many daughters and sons that I have adopted over the years, and she is one of them. Very proud to have her as part of the family.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. So first I want to just acknowledge the fact that the reason we have you speaking this month is because it's Women's History Month. It was International Women's Day earlier this month, and we just thought that you would be a perfect guest feature for this. And I'm curious to start, how does hearing that introduction, hearing Whitney and I talk about all your successes, and in general, whenever you get introduced, it's like this, how does it feel? Are you proud of your career so far?
Oh, it's very exciting to think about all the milestones that were created, but they weren't created by me. They were created by we and all the amazing people that came through Cone, that I am so proud of. Like Whitney is one, and there are so many that are now presidents or CEOs of firms or entrepreneurs or heads of not-for-profits. And so that's very, very exciting. And but I never sit on my laurels. So there's always more to do. And so, and that came from the fact that I am a third generation entrepreneur. My grandfather came to this country from Russia, from Latvia, with nothing. He had $5 maybe in his pocket, and he sold rags on the streets of Atlanta. And ultimately I don't know how, but he ended up owning cotton mills in the South. And my mother was very entrepreneurial, and she founded the first off-Broadway theater in New York.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so I grew
Cool.
up around a lot of self-made people who were resilient and just forged new paths. So I
You have
guess,
a passion for the arts then, for theater?
well, oh, I did a little bit of it, children's theater and things like
Maybe
that. But
too
I
much of
think
it
that,
as a kid.
when we all have to convince those in terms of our clients or not-for-profit partners, or, to do what we see that they may not see, we have to be not theatrical in a fake way, but in an inspiring.
Yeah, no, that's true. And so I was wanted to dive into what you were like as a kid. How would people describe you as a kid? Like, what were some of the things that they said, and is it consistent today?
Yeah, it was. First of all, I was very much of a tomboy, and I was a neighborhood organizer, and we did all sorts of amazing games and things. We had a little newspaper. I had a gift wrapping. I have for this funny story. I had a gift wrapping business where I would shave crayons onto tissue paper, and then I would take my mother's iron and I would iron them. But it would, look great, but then it would start melting on the iron, and I would get in trouble. So that definitely was not my future business. But I rode. My parents got divorced and I got a pony. The pony kicked me like right there, so I almost lost my eye. Started showing horses when I was really young, and so horses were my passion. But I also love lots of animals, and we had a great neighborhood, really lots of fun.
So you're mother to many fur babies. So do you ever want to get to become a mother yourself? You're the mother of social impact. You've got so much under your belt. What?
I don't know. I think part of that's timing. I mean, it wasn't like I had to have children. I mean, I think that I have this incredible, amazing amount of colleagues, and we had over 200 interns at Cone, and so it just didn't happen, and that's okay. I have great fur babies, and I had some amazing horses in my life. I actually had a stallion that was national jumping champion, and I bred him. I mean, I was not a great talent in that department, but we bred about 10 or 12, and there's a couple great ones on the ground, which is nice because my stallion, he died a couple years ago, but he was just absolutely, I mean, talk about a work ethic. So I always used to say, like, when my showing was great, my work wasn't so good, or my work was great and showing wasn't so good. So I had another thing
So you had to choose. You
balance.
still had
Yeah.
to choose.
And
Like,
actually,
what to choose.
a week ago, I got slammed. I fell off my horse and I couldn't walk for a couple days. But about day 3, I got back up again, and I jumped him again last weekend. So you got to be resilient. And whether you're running your own company or you're in this field, you have got to be resilient. Because one of the things I always said is you get like 9 no's before you get a yes.
Yeah.
And you
That's
just
true.
can't give up.
What do you think created that resiliency? Was it a mentor, or like what told you that you could always, someone told me the other day that the what was it? The quote was kind of like, with, you know what, I'm going to come back to the quote because it was about like resiliency, and people just need to have imagination when they think about worrying. It's like the opposite of worrying is
Like
having
worrying.
a strong imagination. But
Well, I think that not only just resilience, but creativity. Like, my mentor was my mother, and my mother was incredibly creative. And my parents got divorced. I got a pony, yeah, but my mother then married this incredible artist who was 10 years younger. He looked like Errol Flynn. He was gorgeous. And I was like living this crazy existence because they were very much involved in the modern art world, and Alan Caprow and Claes Oldenburg. And my stepfather would do these events that were called happenings. And the first time we went to Europe when I was 16, which, gosh, got to go to Europe.
Yeah.
And we're at the Hotel Negresco in the south of France. And my stepfather, who's very handsome, he's got a full head of hair and a beard, he comes down to dinner, and his hair and beard used to be brown. It's white. I'm going, huh? White, you know? The next night he comes down and it's bright pink. It's cerise. And I'm going like, okay, what's going on? And basically when we went to London, my parents did this happening. And it's real art and it's practiced and it's real time. And I was freaking out because like the police came up and they had a black Mariah and they picked up my parents and I'm standing there on Portobello Road with my sister and I'm 16 years old and I'm going like, what?
Yeah.
And ultimately everything was fine. But, you know, to be around such creativity, whether it was the theater or art, it really helped me in terms of my career, think of things or put things together that just weren't imagined.
Yeah.
And that's one of the loves, the things that, you know, my superhuman power is connection making, which is kind of how I made the Aflac duck, my special Aflac duck, but I've been doing it my whole career. So all of us, you really need to like hone into your superhuman power and try and just utilize it. Because again, we're all forging new territories in this field that we're in.
Right. The quote I was trying to think of, and you just kind of summed it up again, is like, worry is just a misuse of imagination. So it's like, we could think about the barriers and worry about them, or we could just, you know, imagine the possibilities. So,
well, possibilities would be good, but, you know, I'm worried too, because you want to make sure that you don't, you know, I always say that God is in the details, because you can have a great idea, but you've got to like cross the T's and dot the I's. So you got to be good in big ideas and then also execution.
Right. And how did you get into the purpose journey?
I basically, it was intuition, and I grew up in the late 60s and 70s. I was just old enough when President Kennedy was shot, Martin Luther King was shot, and Robert Kennedy was shot. And, you know, the world was on fire, the Vietnam War. I was from a liberal family. And so when I went to a very, very activist college, Brandeis. I mean, we were taking over buildings, and I always said I marched in Washington, but I didn't burn any buildings, but it was close. And so when I finally got into my career, I loved brands. And, you know, I started out in traditional, I had a master's in communications from Boston University. And I started out in traditional public relations, and I worked in the sporting goods industry a lot. And then we ended up getting Timberland, and then we got Rockport. And, you know, the CEO of Rockport came to me and he said, I'd like to build my company in a special way. And you've done this incredible job with Timberland, had them on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. And we created these boat shoe wars around the globe with no internet. So that was really tough. And so Rockport shoes were brilliant, but they were ahead of their time. They were Nike innards and street shoe outers. And so we did the traditional, took them to the editors, and the editors went, no. And so it took about a year, and the CEO, you know, you got to be a good listener and you got to be able to connect dots. And he started, you know, he'd go to these trade shows and he'd have these big, beautiful pictures of people walking. And I started walking, you know, maybe, you know, and I started investigating walking for fitness and health. And it really wasn't there. But there was this point in time, the insight was you had people aerobicizing and getting hurt and runners getting hurt, and they needed something else that was a new fitness exercise. So long story short, I connected authentically what Rockport could do, and they were great for walking. And so we basically created the fitness walking movement with a guy who walked around the country, and he talked to kids, and he said, you know, don't smoke, eat properly, and walk. And we did a film and an institute and books, and Rockport rebranded itself as the walking shoe company. And we basically created a $1 billion category at retail. Rockport became the walking shoe company. I was very, very proud. We were everywhere. And this is pre-internet days. Yeah. We actually did a walking test, and we had it on Good Morning America, and we got hundreds, thousands of letters that wanted the test, but we had to open them up. It was funny, we had opening letter parties.
Oh my God.
And, you know, Rockport was very successful, but unfortunately Reebok bought them. So then we worked with Reebok and Human Rights, and then Heinz, and we did content. We did original TV for them, and then Avon, and just started doing it.
Awesome. One of the questions that I ask people when they're asking how to get into the purpose journey or what area to dive into, I just ask them what pisses them off. That usually is a place where they're going to most authentically put their energy. So what pisses you off? What is an area that you are
Oh, what
easily
pisses me off is purpose washing.
okay?
Oh my God. I mean, every day I see a new purpose firm, a new announcement, a new thing, a new that. And a lot of it comes from our brethren in advertising or in consulting or whatever. And there's a lot of heart in it. But in terms of understanding the depth, it's like the deep keel that you must have on a big sailboat with a big sail. It is not there.
Yeah.
And so there's great work, but there's also horrific, cringeworthy work, which is why I wrote that essay. I started last summer, really seeing a lot of things that really bothered me. And so I started writing an authenticity and purpose essay, which I know is going to be in the chat. And it's long. It's an essay. It's not bite-sizable. It is 4,000 words, but I took a lot of my favorite podcasts. And so I have, of course, Unilever and P&G and AB InBev and TCS and Mars and a few others. And I started looking for the threads and then telling like real proof points. And so what pisses me off is really bad work in our field. And it also, another thing that pisses me off is that we don't get enough funds to really do the deep work. So if you're lucky, you get $1 million or $2 million or whatever. I mean, my special app Black Duck did cost a lot to develop it, to manufacture it, and then go to CES and all over. But we don't get enough money.
So how do you, because the conversation has shifted a lot, even in my, 10 years of doing this. How has your business case changed? What do you touch on to say, because surely it's easier now to say, if you don't have a purpose, you're irrelevant. Like but when you need more money, like when they're saying, okay, we have $50,000 for this campaign, and that's just 1% of our overall ad spend and marketing. How do you make an argument for them to look at it differently?
Well, I think that you've got to, 50,000 is not going to take you very far.
No.
We always start with working and doing interviews across the C-suite. And you really have to, and we always ask, why now?
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that every company, the early adopters, they did it. I grew up around Anita Roddick and Ben and Jerry, and I know those guys, and Stonyfield and Tom Zemain. I know all of those guys who are contemporaries. Those are the early guys. They knew how to do it. They didn't need any of our help.
Mm-hmm.
The mass middle of companies, whether it's B2C or B2B, and we did that great B2B research. I think Whitney, you've done all the research, yours and mine in the past, whatever. There's not that much left, but we did B2B, and the B2Bs are saying, yeah, we have a purpose. 86%, but only 24% have embedded it.
Mm.
So,
so
how do you tell it? I think that one, you've got to be, you got everybody here. Lawrence, hey, everybody here Lawrence was the first member of the Purpose Collaborative. I love this guy. Reputation Leaders in the UK is great. Yay, thanks, Lawrence. You have got to create that deck, that education deck. And we always ask for something which is called a level set. Get the senior folks in the room and try and talk about their competition and best practice, et cetera. Because if you don't level set them that this is strategy, you're going to be fighting so many battles, you will never be successful. And I'm not saying that we get the level set. I mean, today it's like, oh my God, I've got to get my purpose done now. I'm behind the curve. Every company's kind of have a little something, or it's disparate, or it's philanthropy here and it's marketing here, or whatever, and it's not connected. So, I'm sure we all are. There's so much great content. We're constantly sending articles. I mean, Sustainable Brands is great, and CECP is great, and United Nations and all the things they're doing. There's so many great pieces of great research and content. The problem is that nobody's got time to read it.
If they only had time to read 2 things per year that comes out, what are things that you never miss?
Oh, well, okay. I have to promote my own podcast because it's great.
It's good. Everyone should.
Really good. I just interviewed Judy Samuelson, who has a great book called 6 New Rules of Business. And she has got the finance background and the Ford Foundation background. She's at the Aspen Institute. You guys got to read that book. It's great. Or listen to the podcast. You know, there's lots of pieces. I love Just Capital. I think Martin Whitaker and what he has done there is, I think, extraordinary. I think sustainable brands. I think that Green Biz. You know, everyone's got the things that they read, but it's like, you know, it's 3 hours a day on top of all the other things you have to do. And then you're always worried about what you're going to miss out on. I mean, Harris, I don't know if you guys have followed Harris during the pandemic. They have done something like 55 polls. I mean, they were doing boom, boom, boom. The other one who I think is great is Morning Consult. Has got some great research. And by the way, you asked Melissa about what do you show to the C-suite? There was a survey that Morning Consult did where they asked general public and influencers 48 traits of what a CEO, how it should be seen as a leader. 48. So you had a large universe, but it wasn't totally open-ended. Of the top 10, five are related to purpose. And the number one was how the company was giving back to society. And I show that this is about corporate reputation, individual reputation. And I show that it's not Carol Cohn or, you know, the great work that, you know, Porter's doing or just others are doing. Lawrence is doing incredible research. It's just, there's so many that are now agreeing that, you know, it's not about features and benefits. It's about what you stand for and how you put it into action.
Yeah. I heard you say this recently, maybe it was in the Purpose Collaborative Summit last week. You talked about if they're asking questions about ROI, they're not ready. But I want to challenge this because I definitely think that like purpose must be profitable to be sustainable.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that making a business case for it and also talking to the ROI is important and helps drive that further. So like, what is your thoughts about like when is an ROI conversation appropriate and what kind of return is appropriate for them to be looking at? What should that conversation?
Okay. Great that you asked that. The conversation needs to start at the beginning. And so probably most of you are working on a reset or an enhancement. So you got to know, okay, where have we been? What worked? What didn't work? Who do you admire? Do all that. But then, you know, setting the measurement. And so, you know, we're working with some clients, you know, and they swear by Reputation Institute, which has an amazing ongoing analysis. And it says it's got 7 quadrants and, you know, how are you compared to but it doesn't go deep enough. And so some companies are doing that and then they're layering other research. When I was interviewing Judy Samuelson, and this is a Paul Pullman said that one of the things that they were so proud of for Unilever is that they were #1 in 50 countries on LinkedIn as the #1 most desired company to work for in packaged goods. And Judy Samuelson said the same thing in terms of retention, recruitment, because there are huge correlations between turnover and keeping and staying power. And I would like to say that Tata Consultancy Services, that has 450,000 employees, they're the #1 world's information services technology company. They have passed Accenture and IBM, that they have a retention rate of, I think it's set 87 to 89%. And when they bring in their employees, they have Balaji Ganapate. Listen to that podcast of mine. It's great. Balaji Ganapate, global head of CSR. He has a team of 400 people, half for technology and half are like on the ground. And basically, when someone comes into TCS, they spend 3 months really learning the culture. And the first client they have is a not-for-profit. A not-for-profit. So they learn the skills and applying the culture of TCS. And this is about culture. I mean, deep purpose that works when that dog hunts. That is about, you know, and I did a very quick speech recently for Sustainable Brands. I said the 4 C's: commitment, that's the depth,
Mm,
culture, colleagues, and collaboration.
mm.
And I think the 4 C's are really easy to remember. I mean, there are other things besides those, but if you get those right, you're going to create an organization that is powering. It's just ignited.
Well,
You
and
know,
then the
as
really
Larry,
races if they have the 5 C's and they have Carol added to the.
okay, that's sweet of you to say. But that's kind. I'll take that as a thank you.
I know some of your colleagues at Carol Cohn on Purpose, your current consultancy, and I've met a lot of people that have worked with you through the Purpose Collaborative. So when I think about, even though you sold your company, went to Edelman shortly, on to do this, like, you have retention, even though you're moving around, like, people follow you. And so what do you think is something that business leaders can learn from how you keep people wanting to work with you? Like, what do you?
Well,
Yeah.
it's kind of you to say. So, and we're trying to bring the old gang back, the old Cohn gang. So I've got a lot of people that we're talking to now. And we do have, I mean, you know, I am blessed. One of the things I learned when I was a Cohn of Cohn is that you get great people. I mean, Julie was there, Julie Hall. We had a killer time together. She was phenomenal. And you let them go. You got to trust them, and you let them go. And, you know, sometimes you get kicked. You know, remember, my nickname in college was Crash. I fell off a horse and I was out cold for like an hour.
Oh no.
So my nickname was Crash. You know, so you crash, but you've got that resiliency. You got to move forward. And so I think that people are gonna make mistakes, but if you believe in them, and you know, this is great work. You can see I get so excited. This work is so exciting to do that, you know, people say you're going to retire, like when, you know? So I think that hiring great people, giving them clarity about what they need to do, giving them feedback, ongoing feedback, you know, like daily ongoing feedback. I mean, you know, I am so blessed. I got to give a shout out to my alter ego at Carol Cohn is Kristen Kenny. She is another daughter of mine. She actually even rides horses. She's not a real daughter, but I think she is. She's amazing and she completes me. But Talia Bosch, who is one of my partners, she is so brilliant. I just get out of her way.
Yeah.
I just get out of her way. She's got 10 brains to mine. And all I try and do is amplify her. You know, Christian Miranda, who I've known for forever. We worked at Cohn for years and then Edelman, and now she's back. She is absolutely amazing. Joe Dobrow, one of my first hires when I was Cohn. He's back doing certain things. So it's just amazing to work with people that you know and you trust.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of fun.
Awesome. So when you decided to pack up and move on from Cohn Communications, what was it that told you it was time? How did it feel?
It's a great question. You know, there were these cycles in terms of agency consolidation that happened like every 10 years. And the first 10 years wasn't ready. And then the second 10 years, we started having scale and such. And a friend of mine, John Broder, had sold to Omnicom. And we had a lot of people, Brad's going, John Broder is a great guy. What a prince. And, you know, you talk to your friends, and I wanted scale for Purpose. I mean, we were so early in, and, you know, I would get patted, you know, you always ask about, I didn't feel any sort of gender issues. You know, I'm short. So a couple times I got patted on the head, oh, aren't you cute? You're doing this philanthropy thing. But I was a tomboy, man. I played, by the way, hockey, field hockey in high school. And man, you gotta be tough. Especially I was little and you had these giant women that were, you know, but I was fast. You know, so, you know, I wanted scale. And, you know, people were checking us out and, you know, and it was like, there was like a bidding war and things like that. And it had been about 20 years. And I want to go global. And so I said, you know, John said, oh my God, Omnicom's great. You should do it. There was this fellow, Tom Harrison, who was the head of, you know, DAS, Diversified Agency Services. And we all fell in love. And we all had these dreams to really, really grow and flourish. And so that, you know, I wanted to just keep growing. And Omnicom was good for what it was. We didn't get the scale that we wanted. Everybody thought we were great with what we did. And, but I got to do more chairman type things, and Jens Bang became the president. And I got to do some wonderful things. He wrote a book. So with Christiane Miranda, she was one of my authors. We wrote this book, and I got to be the first PR judge at Cannes. There were 2 of us. That was a blast. That was so good. I gave the first purpose speech on the main stage at Cannes, and all these young people came running up. I want to do that kind of work. So, Omnicom it didn't work out quite the way I wanted it, but, I stayed in for, gosh, almost 8-9 years. And then, at that point you go, you learn about your earnout's over. And then I didn't get this global, I wanted double, triple in size. We didn't, probably more our fault than anybody else's. But, then I said, yeah, do I want to go private? And Richard Edelman and I knew each other, and I have huge regard. That guy's got a brain like, woo, I mean, amazing. And he's got, photographic memory. And we just kind of every now and then talk, whatever. And then I just decided I'd just take the big leap and leap.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything that you like, any advice that you'd have to anyone that has a business that would be in a similar situation? Like, what would you encourage to consider?
It's, when you lose, people kept saying to me, oh, your name's not on the door at Edelman. And I said, I don't care.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got this platform. I mean, when we did their good purpose research, which was global, and I'm going to India and I'm giving speeches in India and setting up the practice in India. And I'm in Brazil and giving speeches there, and in Amsterdam and the UK and Paris. And it's like, yeah, I am, because my purpose is to up-level everyone else's purpose, whether it's clients or individuals or agencies. So, and we did some great things at Edelman. But we were a small part of a larger organization. But, things that I was so proud of there is that we built an amazing team. We had 100 people of the most amazing people in the world. But what I didn't understand is I only had one that reported directly to me. So that dotted line influencing thing, I didn't have the patience for that as much. But, we worked with the Girl Scouts and did their 100th anniversary and created a new goal of, it was called To Get Her There, Gender Equity by 2025, and created, the American Lung Association rebuilt that to create lung force and women's lung cancer. And then we went to Microsoft and they said it never could get done. And we took their B2B, B2C government and everything, put it together under Youth Spark. That was to reach 900 million youth around the globe. And then something I did with Richard, which I'm really proud of, is that they were turning 60 years old and his health was failing. And so we did something called the 60 by 60 by 60. And it was 60 years and it was 60 offices and it was 60 days to celebrate really for his dad, Dan Edelman. And that was really, really special. And it was something that was done for Dan and for Richard and his mom and his family before his dad passed away. So I felt really good about that. But it's a challenge, I didn't want to run it. I just wanted to do amazing work.
Yeah.
And so, you have to, if you're going to sell to somebody, you got to have the culture fit.
Yeah.
And the one thing I wasn't good at Edelman, I wasn't good at, I was impatient. And you had the black hats and the white hats. And how did you balance those? Big firm, brilliant firm. But the entrepreneurial bug bit me again. And so in, 2015, I went out Carol Cohn on purpose. And I never wanted to be small because I had gotten used to all those colleagues. And that's where I went right. I had the idea about the Purpose Collaborative and I called up, hey, Lawrence, how's it going? Da-da-da-da. And he said, yeah, I'm in. And then a lot of my old friends, they're in. But so we have both the Purpose Collaborative, which has 43 firms, but we also have the consultancy. And I truly believe, as you said, Melissa, that the new way to work is collaboratives. Yeah. That's my 4th C, that no social issue is going to get addressed or environmental unless you collaborate, because the challenges are too great. Yeah. And so I have met the most amazing people in the Purpose Collaborative. I also have our own consultancy, which is small, but it's senior and it's direct. And we have the best, I think, of both worlds.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the nature of the Global Impact Relations Network too, it's kind of spurred out of collaborating with competitors, and people will ask me sometimes, who are your competitors? And I don't mean to sound cheesy when I say this, but I'm like, I don't have competitors. I only have allies. And that's kind of the attitude in the impact space.
You know, the other thing is I think about, if I hadn't left Edelman, I don't think my special Aflac duck would have been created.
Why?
Because I met, why? Well, I just think that it's serendipity. You know, I look at all of the things that had to happen for that duck to get created. And I had to, you know, meet the developer, and he was part of the Purpose Collaborative, and I never would have met him without that. So, you know, you think about the things that would or wouldn't have happened. So it's, you know, it's destiny, guys, you know.
You talked about the patting on the head, and I use that analogy sometimes because the conversation even 5 years ago still felt like I was a Girl Scout on the other end of the boardroom table trying to sell this, you know, cute idea, and maybe a little bit more than 5 years ago, but it has changed quite a bit. And I'm just curious, like, for anybody that's still experiencing the that's cute sort of not condescending, but they just don't really get it.
Mansplaining. Sorry for the men on the phone. I know you're all great.
But like, you know, and you've been quoted 10 years ago. I wrote it down. We live in a reset world where businesses and society must partner for mutual benefit. Engagement on societal issues is no longer a nice to do, but a must do or have to do. And like, I think about that. You've been saying this for 40 years, and I can't help but note Larry Fink says something very similar 5 years after you said that, and the world changes and listens up. Do you think that if it was, you know, if you're a man, or do you think that like there's weight that carries? So do you draw any lines there at all? Or
well, I
hate
to say it, but Larry Fink has 7.8 trillion reasons behind him.
Yeah,
the dollars. You know, he's got a huge platform.
Yep.
And so, you know, if you had a woman that had that platform, I don't think it's gender related. I think it's the financial community related. And I think it's the financial community that's embracing, you know, if you're watching the new appointee of the SEC, where ESG may be regulated to be reported. When you start having regulations like that, then you're getting the teeth into something that was perhaps seen as a nice to do versus a have to do.
Right. I want to give people time to ask questions. I have more, but does anyone have questions in the question box before okay, Whitney. Whitney, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, go ahead, Whitney.
Sure. Carol, you've been around the block, right? You've seen a lot of different iterations of our work, you know, in different terms being used. It was cause branding, cause marketing, social impact, philanthropy, you know, then we moved into CSR, now purpose, now ESG. Where do you think we are now, and where do you see us going as an industry?
Well, you've got a couple questions here. One, you've got terminology. And I always say that there's just too much terminology. And so I always say, start out, whomever you're talking with, what are your objectives? Who are you trying to reach? Get, you know, clarity and be on the same level of what you're trying to accomplish. And then you're going to start in your head, if you're, you know, and you're all sophisticated, you're going to, oh, that's an application of, you know, social impact, or that's an application of governance or something like that. So I think that I always say that, because that's why those level sets are so important. I mean, we all talk the lingo, but 99.9% of the world do not understand, and they think it's all jargon. Where is it going? Just that's the world's like largest question. Where it's going is that companies must act in a different way. And if they are going to get, you know, attract the best and brightest, if they're going to ignite and animate people to really push through barriers and to also collaborate and to innovate and to be inventive, you need to bring the whole person to work. And having, so companies will express, and the level of their commitment will be 60%, 70, 80, 90, you know, no one's going to be quite like Unilever. And, unfortunately, look at what happened with Danone and Emmanuel Faber, and they took him out.
Yep.
So, they're talking about you have to have profit and purpose. It's the power of and. And Judy Samuelson had some great comments, and she said the next generation of leadership in companies, especially when it becomes more diverse, this is going to shift. You're going to have people of color, you're going to have, women, you're going to have all sorts of, because diversity gets you creativity. And so that's where this is going, is that you can't have a healthy company in a failing world. We've all heard that. And so there's so many opportunities for product development and innovation and for growth. So if you look at society and the environment as opportunistic in a good way, and then you find the alignment, you have unlimited potential, but you also got to run the company well, and you got to also be profitable.
Emily, you have a question. Do you want to introduce yourself and ask?
Sure. Hi, Carol. I was curious, you've talked about Affleck and Tom's. Are there other campaigns that you've seen and sort of thought, oh, shoulda, woulda, coulda?
Oh, the shoulda, oh God, the shoulda, woulda. Yeah, I said that the other day, and I don't remember which one it was. I love all the Unilever work, and I got to do Unilever work. That was one of my favorite things to do. You want to come to London for 2 days? Yeah, sure, no problem. Singapore, it took a little longer. Love working at Unilever. P&G is doing some amazing work. Mars, the family, that you can be private, and you can truly, the world we want tomorrow is how we do business today. What a purpose. That's incredible. So, IKEA is doing great work. I love Starbucks in terms of the culture. AB InBev, they treat all their employees like owners. 498 of their 97 of their brands are local. They only have 3 global brands. There are so many great examples. There's a B2B company called Lineage Logistics. It's one of my podcasts, and you've never heard of them, but they are refrigerated storage. They handle, I think, 1/3 of the U.S. food from field to fork, and 1/10 of global. And they have people in jackets in cold storage, and they say they're a technology company because they're trying to get food and faster and greener and whatever. Their CEO has got such a culture there. It's unbelievable. So there's lots of great examples. You're going to find the ones that you want to fall in love with and then dive really deep, but you can find a lot of them on my podcast, because we're almost to 100. So I think that I'm kind of a closet journalist. The journalism world doesn't have to worry about me, but I love doing it. And I love listening to Michael Barbero, who does the daily podcast. I ride my bike and I listen to him. It's great.
Lawrence, you have a question. I kind of feel like this question might have been answered a little bit, but you want to go ahead and jump in?
Sure. And shout out, Carol. I think it wasn't starting the Purpose Collaborative was not just starting a new venture, it was starting a whole new business model of doing purpose, which I think was what excited me at the time, and obviously you. And my fondest memories were of us working together on the Dove Real Beauty Self-Esteem campaign. And I think the lesson that I took from that was the way that you helped to engineer a complete rethink of the Dove Self-Esteem board. Right. So it was taking all of the best business practices and saying, look, you guys just can't be a bunch of influencers getting together. You've got to have a job to do. And creating a board that was actually effective, brought together a whole lot of diverse talents from actors to brand people and got them thinking and alignment. How do you create that kind of energy and bring together people on a board to create the next of secrets to creating the Dove Self-Esteem Purpose Board and the kind of people that you wanted on it and how you energized it?
It's a great question, Lawrence, because I interviewed the other day Nextdoor. And if any of you know Nextdoor, it is the ultra local think about Facebook or community. And they are backed by the who's who of Silicon Valley.